Welcome to our Professor Dan sir and Dayananda sir for evaluating the sessions. And also I am welcome the Professor Vikram Karte. He is a professor and HOD, Jigmar Pondicherry. I had the opportunity to enjoy his hospitality during the DNB examination times.
Thank you very much.
So he's very close, friendly to me. And also welcoming our Sri Kumar, Professor of Surgery, Government Medical Trichy, and additional Professor Santosh John, Government Medical Calicut. Now I welcome all my students and assistants for the sessions. So Ajil Babu, I also welcome you. You can start your case presentation. Start.
Good evening, sir. Shall I share my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, you are
please.
audible and visible. Okay. You can start.
Shall I start, sir?
Yes, okay. Okay.
Good evening, teachers. I am Dr. Akhil Babu from Thrissur Medical College, final year resident. I am going to present a case on lower abdominal mass. A presenting case of Mr. X. He is a 30-year-old male hailing from Palakkad. He is a manual laborer. He is studied up to class 12. His presenting complaints: abdomen pain for 1 month and abdominal lump for 1 month. Now coming to the history of presenting illness, this apparently normal male presenting with the lower abdominal pain for the past 1 month. Insidious in onset, which was dull aching type, intermittent in nature, lasting for 30 minutes. No aggravating factors were there. Relieved only on medication with no radiation of pain. There was also a history of vomiting, 2 episodes 5 days back. Non-bilious vomiting, not blood stain, contained only food particles, about 50 ml in volume, which was not associated with the lower abdominal pain. Patient also became aware of a lump in the lower abdomen when pointed out by a local physician. According to the patient, lump initially it was over the right side of the lower abdomen and over the mid-lower abdomen, and the size was approximately the size of his hand, which increased to the present size over the past 1 month. Patient also gives history of low backache, present for the past 1 month, insidious onset, persistent dull aching, aggravated on physical activity, and it is also relieved on medication, and it was not associated with the lower abdominal pain. There is no history of constipation, diarrhea, abdominal distension, melena, blood in stools, mucus in stools. There is no history of loss of weight or loss of appetite. No history of yellowish discoloration of eyes and urine. Cough, no history of cough, breathlessness, altered sensorium, fever, evening rise of temperature, tiredness, no dysuria, hematuria, increased frequency of micturition. Now coming to the past history, no history of similar illness in the past. Patient gives history of absent right testis since birth, not evaluated. Detailed history is not available. No history of diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular accident, CVA, TB, previous surgeries, blood transfusion, drug allergy or hypertension. There is no history of any radiation exposure. Personal history: his bowel and bladder habits are normal. Sleep is normal. Non-vegetarian diet. Non-smoker. Non-alcoholic. Married for the past 3 years and having 1 child of 2 years. There is no history of any loss of libido. No history of any infertility treatment. Now coming to the family history, he is a first child of a 2 child, and he is having a brother. There is no history of any similar illness in the family. No history of any malignancy in the family. No history of any neurofibroma disease in the family. No history of tuberculosis in the family. Socioeconomic status: he belonged to a poor socioeconomic status family. General examination: a patient examined after taking proper consent with proper exposure and under adequate light. He is moderately built and nourished. He is conscious, oriented in time, place, and person. His weight is 60, height is 170 centimeters. His BMI is 20. His performance score is 90. There is no signs of any dehydration. There was no pallor, icterus, cyanosis, bilateral pedal edema, clubbing, generalized lymphadenopathy. No pigmented nevi, skin nodules, pubic hair and secondary sexual characteristics are normal. No gynecomastia. His vitals, his pulse is 70 per minute, regular, normal volume, no radial or radiofemoral delay. All peripheral pulses are felt normal. Lower limb pulses were felt normal. BP is 110/70 in right arm sitting position. His respiratory rate is 18 per minute. He is afebrile. Abdominal examination, the patient examined in supine position and on standing position after emptying the bladder. This is a picture showing the mass. This is a lateral picture showing the mass. Now coming to the inspection.
No, wait. Unmute. Hello?
Sir.
Ajal Babu, wait for 1 minute.
Okay,
Now
sir.
we'll go to examine. Before going to the abdominal examination, we'll go to the examination. Hello?
Yes, sir. Abdominal examination.
Wait. We'll go to the examination. Vikram, sir? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to the history, general examination, up to general examination? He reached up to.
Okay. You want me to ask up to general examination? Okay, fine. Can you just tell what did you interpret from this history?
Sir, a patient is a young patient, 30-year-old with a history of absent right testis.
Okay.
So I'm thinking of an undescended testis, which might turn into a malignancy. Sir.
So what are the points in history which are favoring that? Okay. The one point what you mentioned, the patient is not able to appreciate the testis in the right side of the scrotum. Apart from that, what are the points in favor of this and what are the points which are against this in the history only?
Sir, in the history, it's a lower abdominal mass, sir. And consider the age of the patient, sir. And with the history of undescended testis, there is chance for malignancy, sir.
No, so there are all the points are in favor only, or there are some points against also? Everything is fitting.
Sir?
You said something about vomiting and those points. Would you like to consider those points?
Sir, vomiting may be due to this large size of the mass causing any compression effect, or sir, or this malignancy causing any.
No, can you just repeat that point? You're a little fast in that. So can you just share that slide again regarding vomiting and some other symptoms, what you said?
Yes, sir.
Right.
See, if you see history of vomiting, 2 episodes, 5 days back, not bilious, not blood stain, containing food particles, all these things. Okay. So what could be the cause for this? Lower abdominal mass using vomiting?
Sir, it may be due to the paraduodenal nodes, which might compress the duodenum, causing vomiting.
Any other possibility?
Sir, the pain might itself cause vomiting, sir. Due to the severe pain, he might vomit.
You said that this could be due to obstruction due to nodes or the extrinsic obstruction due to the mass. Does it look like that? And if it was that, how the vomiting would be different? The history of vomiting would be different.
Sir,
see, whether it is nodal mass or an extrinsic compression, it will lead to mechanical obstruction, is it not? Both the things will be there and they will be progressive in nature. So don't you think the vomiting also has to be progressive in nature? Progressive means it will start with 1 or 2 episodes, 2 has to become 4, and it has to be for a longer duration of time. You already examined the mass, you know the size of the mass. So that sort of thing, if you connect it, after examination also you can come back to history to ask some points. Okay. So do you think this is related to that or unrelated?
Sir, I think it is not related because only 2 episodes were there, sir. I think it's due to the large size and pain might causing this vomiting.
Okay. Now, let me ask you one more question, okay? Before I close, as far as the history is concerned, that the patient is complaining of a mass in the lower part of the abdomen, okay? The patient is not
Yes.
saying right lower quadrant, okay? Lower abdomen, is it not? And what picture you showed, there also it looks like a case of lower abdominal mass. So if it's a case of lower abdominal mass and you said it is related to absence of testis, how will you explain that?
Sir, absent undescended testis is a trigger factor for malignancy, sir, like seminoma, sir. And it
No.
can become.
Let me interrupt you. My question is, if there is an undescended testis and it leads to a mass formation, it may be 4 centimeter, 5 centimeter, 7 centimeter, but won't it be in the right iliac fossa rather than lower abdomen, central abdomen?
Yes, sir. The patient initially gives the history that it was more on the right side, then increased to the present side, sir.
Any other way you can explain it?
Sir, other DDs like, sir, any retroperitoneal mass tumor, sir, which can present like this, sir.
No, I'm saying if you are considering the possibility of a testicular tumor, my question is, any other way this lump can be explained? That's the question.
So it can be a nodal mass, sir. Big
Which
nodal
nodes
mass.
you are talking of?
Sir, usually parietic nodes are involved, but if the iliac nodes are involved due to large tumor load causing retrograde flow, sir, then iliac nodes
That
might.
is theoretical, is it not? What you are telling? Okay, I accept that the other cause could be a case of retroperitoneal lymph node enlargement. That also can give rise to a lower abdominal mass. Okay, that can give rise to an abdominal mass. Usually, it may not be lower abdominal, but it can give rise to a large mass, and we don't know exactly from the history where the mass is present, but it can give rise to a central abdominal mass if at all the patient is complaining of that. In examination, general examination, any particular negative finding, you have listed so many negative findings, is it not?
Yes, sir.
So anything particular, 3 or 4, you can point out which you feel are important in
Sir,
this particular patient.
So this particular patient, due to this large size, patient might develop, sir, bilateral pedal edema, sir. So edema can be ruled out, sir. Any sexual characteristic changes, sir, like gynecomastia, loss of hair, pubic hair, sir.
Why gynecomastia? Due to?
Sir, chances are less, but sir, if it is a non-germ cell tumor, sir, it might secrete.
No, see, you should not be focused only that this is a case of testicular tumor.
Yes.
Could be something else also. The patient might, just because the patient says the testis is, patient is not able to appreciate the testis. Can the testis still be in the scrotum and the patient is not able to appreciate?
Yes, sir. Might be.
What type of testis that is called as? Where sometimes it is in the scrotum, sometimes not. The patient might get confused and tell that I'm not feeling the testis on the right side.
Retractile testis.
Retractile testis. So you should not blame only the testis on history.
Yes.
So what other possibility? You said the other possibility is retroperitoneal tumor. So they accepted. Anything else?
Sir,
you said the mass started predominantly in the right side, is it not? And then it is cross
midline.
Increase in size. It is in the history we know. We don't know exactly midline because it's in history only. So any other possibility you're thinking of, and what are the points in favor and against? If you are thinking in terms of right iliac fossa mass, what are the other 2 conditions which can present with a mass for few weeks duration?
Sir, patient does not give a history of fever, so appendicular mass is chance less is.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Or any psoas abscess history also is ruled out due to no history of fever, sir.
If you are thinking in terms of right iliac fossa mass, what are the 3 common conditions that can lead to that? And apart from appendicular mass, what are the other 2? And I wanted you to comment on those 2.
Sir,
whether it's possible or not possible. Yeah, carry on.
Ileocecal tuberculosis, sir.
Okay, and?
Sir, any carcinoma cecum?
Carcinomas. Is it not? These are the three usually we predominantly make the cause for right leg fossa mass. You said sauce abscess and other things. Okay, they're extremely rare. So of the three, you said appendicitis little unlikely because the features are not there. So can it be the other two?
Sir, in carcinoma cecum, there is no bowel or bowel involvement, sir. There's no history suggestive of any.
No. You have to give points in favor or against, okay, which are usually associated with that number. Is bowel involvement a feature of right-sided cecal colonic malignancy?
No, sir. No, bowel involvement is
But
less.
that's the first point you're telling. So you should not tell like that.
Sir,
So tell me points in favor and against.
Sir, there is no feature suggestive of any blood in stools or melena, sir. Or
again, is it necessary?
the right-sided malignancy is more.
Right-sided malignancy, if it is producing bleeding, what type of bleeding it presents, what type of bleeding it produces, and what is the presentation resulting from that bleeding? It is neither what you said, melena, or something else you said. Both the things are not common. It's characteristically known, right-sided colonic malignancy for that. What is it? I'm asking you. How does it bleed and how does it present? These are the two questions I'm asking. Have you heard about occult bleeding?
Yes, sir.
So how will a patient present when there's occult bleeding? Occult means hidden. The patient will not present with hematochezia or melena.
Sir, he will present with signs of anemia.
Anemia, yes. So did you ask the signs of anemia in this patient?
No history of tiredness was there, sir.
Okay. You mentioned that point, is it not?
Yes, sir,
yeah. So why you are ruled out carcinoma cecum? How you ruled out carcinoma cecum in this patient? Can present with a large lump the way you described.
Sir, considering the age of the patient, chances are rare, sir, for a right-sided lesion.
But it's not unknown 30-year-old. Is it not? I agree that age is not very much in favor, but can a 30-year-old get a malignancy of the colon? Yes.
Yes.
So the question is how you have ruled out. Why you're not considered?
Sir, no bowel symptoms, no signs of anemia, sir.
Again, you are saying the same. Okay.
Sir, no
bowel symptoms will not occur frequently. That is number one. Anemia, if it is present, it is in favor of colonic malignancy. If it is absent, it does not rule out colonic malignancy. Will all the patients bleed? It has got a positive predictive value, not a negative predictive value.
So there is no history of loss of weight also.
Okay. Anything else?
And no history of any colicky pains.
Again, right-sided colonic malignancies, do they produce often intestinal obstruction?
No, sir. Left-sided.
Again and again, you are putting forth the points which you will contradict immediately in the next line. So it should not be put like that. It's a left-sided colonic malignancy, more often associated with annular growth. Because of the annular growth, it may present with intestinal obstruction. So large mass, right side, relatively younger patient, asymptomatic, possible or not possible? That's the question.
Sir, it's not. No, sir. Not chances are rare, sir.
No, at the history level, when you have a lower abdominal mass started from the right side and extending into the midline, we should never ever say that it is not possible. Medicine, how can you say like that? That this is not possible. At the history, I don't know what are the examination findings. So you have to say that I cannot rule out the possibility. Otherwise, you have to give strong points against that and say, I will rule it out. Till now, you're not given a single point apart from age. So why do you say it's not possible? If I were you, I would put it lower down in the diagnosis. My first diagnosis may be testicular tumor. Okay. Second possibility can it be tuberculosis? Ideocecal hypoplastic tuberculosis.
Sir, there is no history of any evening rise of temperature or loss of weight, sir.
If it is absent, does it rule out?
No, sir. And there is no history of any exposure to tuberculosis, sir.
All right. So it is not mandatory to have that, but okay, it is not there. Okay, then tell me the points which are in favor and against. Are you going to consider? You're not going to consider. If you're not going to consider, why? That's the question.
Point
Because
in
I'm telling you again that right iliac fossa mass, 90 to 95% of times it will be these three conditions: appendicitis, tuberculosis, carcinoma colon. All the other things are 5-10%. That is why you cannot absolutely dismiss these things. That is the reason I'm asking if you're dismissing, on what basis? So you are still in history. Postgraduate examination, you cannot get fixed onto a single diagnosis.
Yes.
So refute. Ileocecal hyperplastic tuberculosis, why it cannot be?
Sir, symptoms favoring it is that it is started in the right side, sir. Right side with extending, so it can be.
No, first point, will you consider? You'll not consider. If you're not considering, tell me straight points against, because you're not considered. You cannot add it later on.
Sir, points against us, sir, no contact, sir, and no history of
You have to
any.
give very strong points. Again, no contact. Can you find out whether contact is there or not there? If it is present, it goes in favor. If it is absent, I'm telling you, all these points are such. If there's no history of contact, you cannot rule out tuberculosis. You agree or not?
Yes, sir.
Then strong points. The important points.
So ileocecal TB, hyperplastic TB, most commonly patient will be having colicky type of pain.
Yes, that is one of the things, not most commonly, but it can be associated. Yes. What is the cause for that? And what is the classical history there? What is it called as? Have you heard of a term called Borboric B?
Yes.
What do you mean by that? What will the patient complain so that you'll note in history that this patient has got Borboric B, suggestive of subacute intestinal obstruction associated with a right iliac fossa mass, probably ileocecal hyperplastic tuberculosis. That is how it goes.
Patient will be having mild abdominal distension and rolling feeling, sir, after having food, sir. After
no, rolling feeling and all, it's not that. Patient will appreciate his or her own bowel sounds associated with colic abdomen pain. It won't be so severe like you have an ureteric colic. Their patients roll. It will not be so severe. So is it there in this patient? Did you mention anywhere about this, the history? That no history, the history of colic. I think you told, no? No history of colic abdomen pain. Is it not?
Yes.
Because you associated this vomiting with obstruction. Then why the patient is not having colic abdomen pain?
Sir, there is sir, in this patient.
You only gave the explanation of nodes compressing.
Sir, in this patient, there is no signs of colicky pain.
No, but when you give a history like this vomiting, the explanation you are giving on the basis of obstruction, then patient should have. Anyway, sir, what are the other points?
Sir, if it is colicky, sir, the pain will reduce soon after vomiting, sir.
No, colic abdominal pain part is over. Next. Ileocecal hyperplastic tuberculosis. It's not there. Again, it is not always mandatory, but it's not there. Okay, may not be to anything else which tells you that it's unlikely to be tuberculosis. Ileocecal. Any other point? Any other point? Do they produce large masses? They're done. Ileocecal hyperplastic tuberculosis. It's a fibrosis which results as a reaction to tuberculosis. So will it lead to a mass which is large enough to cross, you said, midline or something like that? You said?
No, sir.
Is the patient aware of the size of the lump?
No, sir. It was made aware by the physician also.
You said something like a fist. That's what you told.
Yes.
That's what you've written there, no? Size of his hand. So is the patient aware? What do you think is the approximate size? Actually, when you ask history like this, you should interpret and tell. You should not tell size of his hand and all. We have not seen his hand, no? So you have seen the hand. So based on that, you should tell that it looks like a lump, which is roughly 10 centimeter in size, according to the patient. What is the size? According to the patient right now, 10 centimeter, 15 centimeter. How much is it? 15 centimeter is a large lump. Is it
Large.
not? Do you get something like that in idiopathic hypoplastic tuberculosis?
No, sir.
Anyway, I don't have further questions on this.
Okay. Sri Kumar, Dr. Sri Kumar. Sri Kumar. Hello, Sri Kumar.
Hello.
Sri Kumar, you want to add anything? The history and general examination?
Okay. What about the nature of the pain?
Sir, pain was mostly dull aching. Sir.
Is it a constant dull ache or a colic in nature?
So it was not colicky, sir. It was a constant dull aching pain.
Okay. Such a big mass producing pain, what could be the reason?
Sir, such a big mass, sir, it in the pelvis or retroperitoneum, sir, it can press over the pelvic structures, pelvic nerves, and cause stretching, causing pain, sir.
Any other way?
Sir,
any problem with urination for the patient?
Sir, there was no urinary symptoms, sir.
No urinary symptoms. And I would like to know, you said the patient noticed that there is no testis. It is how long since he noticed that?
Sir, he tells that the patient since birth there was no testis, sir.
So he has not done any consultations for that?
No, sir. No, sir.
So he has not bothered about that?
Yes, sir.
On general examination, what about the right hemiscrotum?
Sir, in general examination, the right hemiscrotum was underdeveloped, sir.
It is underdeveloped. So what can that be?
Sir, undescended testis, sir.
Okay. If it's a retractile testis, how will be the scrotum?
Sir, scrotum will be developed, sir, with rugosity will be there, sir.
Can be there. Okay. So suppose there are, okay then. And I think you don't stick to one diagnosis when you get such a case in the history. As Vikram Katesar said, you should consider the differential diagnosis when we analyze the history. Okay. Okay, go
Dr. Santosh. Okay, Santosh.
Hello, Agil.
Yes, sir.
How do you consider this vomiting as due to obstruction in the duodenum? Or what are the other features there to suggest that? And why don't you consider other causes for vomiting other than gastric outlet compression?
Sir, he only had 2 episodes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, it was non-bilious, sir. So.
Other than non-bilious, anything else which suggests gastric outlet? What are the other features of vomiting due to this obstruction?
Sir, sir, it was not associated with this pain also. His pain is not relieved with this vomiting.
Okay. The only thing to suggest gastric outlet obstruction for you is non-bilious.
Yes, sir.
Is there any other peculiarities in the vomiting which you can suggest that it is due to gastric outlet obstruction?
Sir, it was sir, after 1 hour or 2 hours, sir, it was patient gives history of vomiting after food intake.
And you have written as it contains food. If it is gastric outlet obstruction, it should be more specific.
Sir,
what type of food?
Undigested food particles.
Huh?
Undigested food particles, sir.
What is a classical history in gastric outlet obstruction regarding the content of the vomiters?
Sir, vomiting occurs after 1 to 2 hours, 2 hours after food intake. Sir, it will contain undigested food particles, sir.
Undigested food particles means the food particles which has been taken how long back?
Sir, 2 hours back, sir. 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours back. Sir.
No. That is not the classical history. It should be more than 6 to 12 hours back. So if there is any such food contents, then only you should think about that. And this is only 2 episodes of vomiting. And without a long history of vomiting and without other classical signs of gastric outlet, how can you correlate it with some duodenal obstruction in case of a lower abdominal swelling?
Sir, I just gave a possibility, sir.
Okay. Okay, that is all from my part.
Ajil Babu.
Yes, sir.
You faced so many questions from the examiners regarding your diagnosis, because I think you had only one diagnosis. That is the problem. As a postgraduate, you should now 2 or 3 differential diagnoses. That is your undescended test. You are happy that's undescended test. So it could be a mass in the paralytic nodes that compress the rhythm, that produce vomiting. So you narrate the history with only one diagnosis of undescended test. As a postulate, it's better to put 2 or 3 diagnoses, and it should not confine to only one diagnosis that is undescended test is produce all the problems. I want to ask on the history and the family history of this undescended test, whether his father had.
No, sir. No history of family. Undescended test.
Okay, your presentation. Okay, next we can go to your local or abdominal examination. Okay, start.
Can I just interrupt? One point I would like to just ask. Can you just, this slide only. See, if you look at the history of vomiting here, 2 episodes, 5 days back, non-bilious, not blood stain, containing food particles, about 50 ml in volume. And would you like to ask again after this, 5 days back this has happened, whether the patient was taking normal diet day in, day out, like morning, afternoon, and evening, and the patient was totally asymptomatic? And if it is, what does it signify? When you get history like this, and if it is what I am asking you, if it is present, like the patient was able to tolerate food 4 days post-vomiting very comfortably without any discomfort, how will you correlate this vomiting? Are you able to, am I audible? You are able to understand the question? Yeah, please answer.
Audible, sir.
Please answer.
Audible.
Sir,
I will tell you also why I asked this question.
Sir, any gastric peptic disease or ulcer?
See, when you take a patient, did you first ask that point? I wanted to know.
No, sir.
4 days post vomiting, why did you ask? See, if a patient has 50 ml of vomitus, I will correlate this vomiting, if the patient is perfectly fine after that, to something what the patient has eaten. Or if the patient is on some medication, some side effect of the medication, will not give any importance to that in this particular case. Because it is just 2 episodes, that too very little vomitus, that to the patient before that the history is there for a month or more than that. After that the patient is absolutely fine. Since I just pointed this out because I said this is unusual, and you tried to correlate by saying extensive compression or nodes or paralytic nodes and duodenal compression, all those things will just not happen with this sort of presentation. So we have to be very careful in interpretation of the history. And then when you have something like this, it is very important from your point of view to ask what has happened afterwards. And if the patient is perfectly fine afterwards, will you consider any point of time, any evidence of obstruction in this patient?
No, sir.
Just not consider. Then anybody can have vomiting. You see, if anybody has 2 episodes of vomiting, do we normally label a patient as intestinal obstruction?
No, sir. No, sir.
No. So why you are saying that? That is what I'm saying. I will immediately downplay this history and not give any importance to it. If the patient was perfectly fine afterwards, you should have asked that one. Very important point in this patient. Because first of all, it doesn't fit in this sort of presentation what you're saying. If you're saying suspected tumor, or even if you're saying chronic malignancy, and even if it is idiopathic hyperplastic tuberculosis, it does not lead to vomiting. Usually. None of them lead to vomiting. So why ask about this? And something like this is present, why not find out the cause? And the patient will tell you, I ate something like this, which is very spicy. After that, I stopped that food and I was fine. So you will just label it as one point, this patient had this episode, and forget about it, and not bring it into making any diagnosis in this patient. And I'm sure it must have happened like that only in this patient. I'm very sure about it. Even though you have not asked that history, if you go back and ask, it will be the way I'm telling you. It's just not possible to have such a small vomitus, 2 episodes, to have any correlation as far as this disease is concerned, whatever the patient is having. So I just wanted to emphasize this point. We'll continue.
Okay, sir. You can continue. Present.
Coming to the general abdominal examination, fullness notice in the hypogastrium, umbilical, right and left iliac fossa. There's no moving with respiration, less prominent on leg raising and head raising test. No visible peristalsis or pulsation. No scars, no dilated veins. Skin over the swelling is normal. Umbilicus is inverted and midline. The hernial orifices are normal. The external genitalia underdeveloped right scrotum with absent rugae. Left hemiscrotum appears normal with normal pigmentation and rugosity. No left supraclavicular fullness. Back of the abdomen is normal. On palpation, the inspection findings were confirmed. There was no local rise of temperature, no tenderness over the swelling. A mass of size 30 into 20 centimeter palpable in the right iliac, left iliac, hypogastrium, umbilical, and right lumbar region. A vertical extent is about 20 centimeter from the pubic symphysis in the midline. Horizontal extent is 5 centimeter lateral to the right midclavicular line to the left midclavicular line. Mass is hard in consistency. Surface is nodular with irregular borders. Lower border cannot be palpated on the right side, and a small part of lower border is palpated on the left side. The mass is intra-abdominal and it's non-mobile. There is no falling forward on the left lateral position. Mass is bimanually palpable but not palatable. No hepatosplenomegaly. The hernial openings are normal. No mass palpable. External genitalia, left hemiscrotum and testis normal. There is underdeveloped right hemiscrotum with absent right testis. No other mass is palpable. Back of the abdomen is normal. No left supraclavicular node palpable. On percussion, the liver dullness at fifth intercostal space, liver span is 15 centimeter. There is a resonant node over the mass. There is no shifting dullness. Drop space is resonant. On auscultation, no bruit or venous hum over the swelling. Bowels once was normal. For rectal examination, tone was normal. There is no melena, no hemorrhoids, no mass palpable. On respiratory system, is normal vesicular breath sounds, no added sounds. Cardiovascular system was normal. Musculoskeletal system, there was no spine tenderness, normal gait. Lower limb examination was normal. CNS examination, higher mental function was normal. No focal neurological deficits. Coming to the summary of the 30-year-old patient with a history of absent right testis, present with a lower abdominal pain and abdominal lump and back pain for the past 1 month. On examination, there is a non-mobile mass of size 13 to 20 centimeter palpable in hypogastrium, both iliac, right lumbar, and umbilical region, which is hard in consistency, nodular surface, cannot get above below the swelling. It is intra-abdominal and extraperitoneal, and right scrotum is empty, underdeveloped with normal secondary sexual characters, and other systems are within normal limits.
So
my provisional diagnosis are right undescended testicular tumor or a retroperitoneal tumor.
okay, going to examination. Vikram sir, hello.
Yes, sir.
You have not mentioned one very important point in physical examination. What is that?
Sir,
If you're suspecting the patient to have this number one, what you have put as testicular tumor in the diagnosis, you should palpate the testis at all the points where it is supposed to be present in a mild descended state. You have not, I didn't see anywhere you mentioning that.
Sir, on hernial orifices and no mass palpable, I mentioned. Sir.
Is that enough? Okay, let me ask you the question other way around. If you are not finding the testis in the scrotum, where will you particularly look for it? What is one of the commonest site where it is found? On
Sir,
physical examination, I'm talking.
if it undescended, sir, it will be in the inguinal canal, sir. Or
commonest site where it is palpable and found. Again, I'm repeating. It's not inguinal canal.
External inguinal ring, sir.
Yes, what is it called? That area where we look for it?
Superficial perineal pouch, sir.
Superficial inguinal pouch. How it can go into the perineum?
Sir, inguinal.
Superficial inguinal pouch. Now, what do you mean by that? When you say it is superficial inguinal pouch, means where the testis goes. If
Sir,
you test the pathway. Yeah, tell me.
near the external opening, sir, there will be a collection.
Beyond the external opening, okay, it goes through the canal, inguinal canal, and just outside the external opening, there will be an area where it will be lying. That is what is called as superficial inguinal pouch. And if you palpate this patient, let's say the examiner palpates, and he finds the testis there, your whole diagnosis will change. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Then how can you afford to miss that point? You will no longer consider, just because the testis is absent in the scrotum, you cannot absolutely blindly think that this is a case of testicular. Even the history you did like that, in the examination also your thought process is like that. That if a patient has undescended testis, the patient has to have a testicular tumor. Is it mandatory like that?
No, sir.
Then you should rule it out. Why you should presume that? I'm not saying that what diagnosis you have made is wrong, but the approach has to be perfect. So you look for it in the canal, you'll particularly mention, you'll not say a mass is not palpable in the canal. You will say that I did not find any testis in the region of inguinal canal or in the superficial inguinal pouch. You should have mentioned that point. And can you go back to the slides? Few other questions I wanted to ask you. This is, you should note, if you get this sort of case in the final exam, be very careful. It's extremely important point, because I said, if you palpate the testis, your complete diagnosis changes. So there's no question of keeping the testicular tumor in mind once you palpate the testis there. And remember that when he's 30-year-old, what sort of testis will it be there if it is there? Likelihood.
Ectopic testis.
No, ectopic is fine, but what will be the size of the testis? Will it be normal size that can be smaller in size? Could be atrophic type.
So smaller in the size.
Yes, possibility is there. So you're likely to miss. So you have to see it very carefully. Okay. You have to see at the internal ring, you have to see the canal and the superficial ring. These are the areas. You see, if it is lying in the abdomen, you may not be able to palpate. It might be difficult to palpate. You may not be able to appreciate it well. So that is why I said, at least when it's outside the ring or near the ring, you should be able to feel. Now, this is the first. Go to the, I think, yeah, probably here. Go to the inspection, put the slides from there. See, what is the first line? Can you read it again?
Sir, fullness noticed and hypogastrium umbilical right and left iliac regions.
And what is the second line?
Sir, usually a lower abdomen mass don't move with respiration.
Then as you are telling the examiner that I believe that lower abdominal masses move with respiration. Why you should give that impression? Do we look for that if it is a mass like this?
No, sir.
What is the upper limit on inspection of the mass?
Sir, just above umbilicus, sir.
Just above umbilicus. So it's far off from the epigastric region, is it not?
Yes.
So there is no question. So don't mention some points which are totally irrelevant. Okay, it's not an undergraduate exam. Even an UG exam also, this is not acceptable. Okay, this is one of the points I wanted to specify. Go to the next slide. The next. When abdominal mass, local rise of temperature. This is not a thigh mass or a back mass. When will this happen? Tell me one condition of an intra-abdominal mass, or here actually the mass looks like retroperitoneal mass, where the temperature will rise of the skin over the mass.
Sir, retroperitoneal mass might be, sir, might be increase in temperatures.
If the retroperitoneal mass is vascular, it will lead to increase in the skin temperature through the muscles. Intra-abdominal wall has got muscles, no?
Yes, sir.
Then laterally you will have the obliques. Closer to the center, you have a thick rectus. Do you think the temperature, vascularity which increases the temperature, it will be appreciated on the skin of the abdomen? Never. So now, at least since you mentioned this, I would like to ask you a question. Tell me one condition across the abdomen where the local temperature will rise with the abdominal mass. Since you mentioned, you should know then. One condition at least. Abdominal mass, when you're suspecting an abscess, intra-abdominal abscess, and it has gone through the parietis, anterior parietis. Sometimes, very rarely, you'll have a liver abscess, left lobe especially, which is going through the parietis and it's coming in the subcutaneous plane. Then only there will be a rise in temperature. Otherwise, this is a very irrelevant finding. This is a finding which you mentioned for masses which are extra abdominal, where they're just beneath the skin. So they will produce that. Go to the next slide. This, how did you test the intrinsic mobility of this mass? You written it's not mobile. You go back to the previous slide. See the size, 30 into 20 centimeters. Now you tell me, how did you look for the intrinsic mobility and how you were so sure that this is a immobile mass? It makes a lot of difference, remember, in the management also. Restricted mobility is totally different from immobile mass.
Sir, it's a large mass.
30 by 20. Your hands cannot cover it, I am very sure. So how did you look for it? Just go to the next slide and explain that immobility. How did you test it? That is what I wanted to ask you. I'm not saying it cannot be done. I'm asking you how you'll do it.
Sir, I use both my hands and put it in, one on the right side, one on the left side. Sir, I try to move.
Tell again what you said.
Sir, using both my hands, sir. One on the left side, one on the right side. Sir.
Okay,
right
of the mass.
Mass.
Of the mass.
Mass.
Okay, then
I try to
push. Try to push it and see whether it is moving. Okay, fine. That's the way you test it. Then vertically also you have to do the same. All right. So when you did that, you're very sure that there was no mobility?
No mobility was there.
Was there any trait of mobility? What do you mean by trait of mobility?
Sir, for large masses, the few part will be mobile due to size.
That's not trait of mobility. Trait of mobility means on clinical examination, when you see a tree, does the tree move? Only the top moves. Does the bottom move of the tree? It never moves, is it not? So trait of mobility is when you find on clinical examination, there is a mass which is mobile, and on surgical examination, intraoperative, or on cross-sectional imaging, you find the mass is fixed to the posterior parietis. That is what is called as trait of mobility. So here the question doesn't arise because you said it's immobile. So if it is immobile on this maneuver, what you said, okay, what you did, then why did you check the position of the mass in these different positions? You said left lateral position and all that.
Sir, I just want to see whether it is falling forward, sir.
No. When we do left lateral position, it is, we don't test for falling forward. Falling forward, we test by knee elbow position. How can we, if you put the patient left lateral position, why the mass will fall forward? It will go on the left side.
Yes.
Let me ask you an additional question here. When you have a large mass in the abdomen like this, and you want to assess, I'm not saying what you said you'll not do. You will assess, definitely you will assess that. Because sometimes with the hand, you may not be able to appreciate the mobility, but due to the weight of the mass might move. If the mass moves, then you can know that it is not fixed to the posterior parietis. So which side will you take, left side or right side, and how will you decide?
Sir, patient mass more on the right side, so I'll put the patient on the left lateral position.
Very good. Yes, wherever the mass is less, because there should be space for it to move. So you have to put the patient left lateral, mark the border first, and then see whether the border moves or not. Okay, that's the way to see it. So I hope you have done like that because you have not written it properly. Okay, so you have said that it is falling forward and all that. Knee elbow nowadays we don't do because it's very uncomfortable for the patient. This is young patient, can be done. Usually masses are found in elderly patients and frail patients. We avoid doing it. But the thing is, lateral position is also fine. That will give you that sort of result. And you feel this is immobile. Now go to the next slide. Now here, where is that allotment and all that you have put? Is it fall in the next slide or the previous slide?
Previous slide.
Previous slide?
Previous slide.
In this slide, is it mentioned or where is it?
Sir, what?
Allotment and Bimanual palpation you have put.
This
This
slide.
side.
This one, here, yeah. Now tell me what you have done and what is this interpretation? Because I didn't understand it.
Sir, being a such big mass, sir, I can appreciate it with both hands, sir.
Which both hands?
Sir,
Don't tell me if you are palpating a mass by two hands, it's called bimanual palpation.
no, sir.
Absolutely not.
Uh,
No, what did you mean by that? That's what I'm asking you. And what did you mean by the mass was not bellotable?
Sir, just ruling out the renal mass.
No, don't get confused. Again, you're totally getting confused as far as this point is concerned. Lower abdominal mass, hypogastric mass, not at all in the lumbar region, neither left nor right. How did you carry out this test? And you written it is bimanually palpable. I thought you're talking of you've done per rectal examination. And then one hand on the abdomen and one hand in the rectum. And if you feel the mass by both the hands, that point of time, then we can use bimanual palpation for pelvic masses. But if it is upper abdominal masses and you are trying to see it in the renal fossa, then you have to put one hand on the lumbar region, anterior abdominal wall, one in the renal angle, formed by the lateral border of the renal angle is formed by what?
The renal angle by 12th rib and erector.
Lateral border of erector spine. Yes, you put the hand there. And then if you can palpate the mass by both these hands together, that is what is called as bimanual palpation. So either it is that or it is this rectal examination, right? The pervaginal, whatever. Here is a male patient, so rectal examination. So neither of the things you have done, but then how you have commented on this? Did you feel this mass in the renal fossa? You written that bimanually palpable.
No, sir.
Then when will you do bellotment of the mass? Since you have put it, I would like to clarify that also. There's always this confusion in PGs. What do you mean by bellotment? Let's say this mass is extending to lumbar region and you want to see whether it is bellotable or not. So what should be the prerequisite for bellotment? There are two prerequisites. What are they?
Usually for a renal mass, sir.
No. It is not necessary. It has to be renal mass. No? Not necessary. Renal mass is one of the masses which can be bellotable. But what I'm saying is it a prerequisite? It has to be renal mass only? No, that's not the prerequisite. There are two prerequisites. One is the mass should be felt through the renal angle and it should not be felt on the anterior abdominal wall. Then only you give a tap. I think it's a video is on. I can show when you give a tap, the mass moves and it hits the upper finger. That is what is called as bellotment. When the mass is palpable through the abdominal wall and not in the renal angle, we don't carry out the test. That is number one. The second prerequisite is for this mass to produce this sort of movement, there has to be a pedicle-like thing. Then only it will move. Otherwise, it will not move. So these are the two particular reasons when bellotment will be done. If bimanual palpation is positive, nobody does bellotment. You are able to feel the mass by both the hands. So where is the question of tapping and seeing whether it touches the other hand or not? So I hope your concepts are clear about this.
Yes.
Okay. So all these points you should not mention. When I was looking at it, I was wondering why you mentioned all these points. Okay, go forward. Let me see any other deficiency in the presentation is there. All right, go to the next. Go to the next. Drop space resonant. Okay, again, drop space is irrelevant here. Where is the mass? Where you are telling?
For completion,
if you are suspecting the patient to have something where it is, when will it be obliterated?
Sir, when there is splenomegaly.
Are you suspecting that in this patient?
No, sir.
So there has to be some relevance in postgraduate examination, and you can't do everything everywhere. You can't do intraoral examination to see whether there's an ulcer there in the oral cavity. You look for that here. Irrelevant, is it not? Something that's totally irrelevant. So this should not be mentioned. Okay, go to the next. You said resonant node over the mass. What is the significance of that?
The percussion was resonant.
Yeah. So what is the interpretation and significance of that?
Sir, bowel might be present over the mass.
Okay. Yes. Colon could be there. More likely colon because it's in the hypogastric region. You can have sigmoid dilated and all that produce the thing. Okay, fine. Go to the next. Go to the next. Go to the next. Go to the next. Next. I think the diagnosis will be there next, is it not? So, all right, go to the next. Now, on what basis you have kept the second diagnosis?
Sir, being a such large tumor, sir, and also it is intra-abdominal retroperitoneal, extraperitoneal.
That's the anatomical diagnosis. Pathological diagnosis?
Sir,
Or that's the pathological diagnosis?
sir, pathological is a liposarcoma.
No. When we say retroperitoneal sarcoma, if you use the word, you use the tumor is a very broad term. Okay, if you say retroperitoneal sarcoma, then I can understand what you're telling. But when you meant by retroperitoneal tumor, I thought it could be something else. What else it could be apart from a sarcoma? A large mass.
Sarcoma is my first diagnosis, sir, in this.
No, it's your second here, but the thing is, apart from, you see, do the sarcomas will be the way you have described the physical examination? What is the surface, what you have described?
No, sir.
What is the type of surface you have described?
So it was nodular. Sir.
Nodular, is it not? And consistency is hard. Now, when you palpate the consistency through the abdominal wall and through the bowel lying on the top, okay, it is very difficult to assess the consistency. It could be firm, it could be hard also, okay? Now, suppose in this particular patient, you find the testis is there in the superficial inguinal pouch. How the diagnosis will change? Nodular mass, very rarely it will be retroperitoneal sarcoma. Remember that. Liposarcoma, and what is the other sarcoma we get in the retroperitoneum? One is liposarcoma. What is the other sarcoma?
Fibrosarcoma.
No, leiomyosarcoma. Okay, these are two predominant retroperitoneal tumors, leiomyosarcoma and liposarcoma, but they will not have that typical hard nodular surface. Okay, at least nodular surface. Let's not be sure about the consistency. What will be your diagnosis if you find the testis?
Sir, if I find the testis, sir, my diagnosis will be a soft tissue sarcoma. Sir.
Again, I'm telling you, you are sticking to the same point. I said soft tissue sarcoma. I'm not ruling it out, but usually they are more smooth. They'll not be nodular. I'm asking you, it's a nodular mass. Which masses in the abdomen are nodular and they lead to a large mass formation in the abdomen?
Sir, any lymph node mass, sir?
Lymph nodal mass, yes. So what pathology can involve the lymph node so it can produce a large mass in the abdomen?
Tuberculosis, sir, can cause.
Tuberculosis, just now only I told that usually it's not common. A vesicle hyperplastic small. In the past, long time back in the past, there used to be a tuberculous mesenteric involvement, tabes mesenterica. That is not seen nowadays.
Sir,
I'm asking something which you commonly see in the wards.
Lymphoma, sir.
Lymphoma, yes. How did you rule that out in this patient? Nowhere in the diagnosis.
Sir, there was no other symptoms, sir, like any.
Again, don't stick to those symptoms. You are again coming back to the evening rise in temperature and all those. Is it mandatory?
No, sir, it's not mandatory.
Half of them will not have that. Don't you think a large nodular mass, you should consider that diagnosis, especially when everything is not fitting? I'm not saying that it is, again and again, I'm telling you, it is not a testicular tumor, but you have to have a very broad mind to make a diagnosis. And if I just tweak the physical finding that you are able to palpate the testis, will you still consider testicular tumor? No. Then what else it can be? Okay, I'll stop my questioning here.
Okay. Sri Kumar, you can add the points. Sri Kumar.
Most of the points are covered. Ajil Babu, I would like to know, where all did you look for the testis in this case?
Sir, in the root of scrotum, sir, and external ring and inguinal canal, sir, mainly.
Which are the tails of gubernaculum?
Sir,
there are 5 tails.
Yes,
so, which are they?
Sir,
there is a scrotal tail that is the strongest, and then inguinal tail. So pubic, femoral, perineal. So the more commonest site is superficial inguinal pouch, agreed, where you look for this, or the ectopic testis. You can look there in the superficial level, but these sites also has to be examined because it is very, as Vikram sir was telling, if this is not an undescended testis, so all these areas should be carefully looked for. Okay. And regarding the resonance, it's somewhat difficult to believe such a big mass, 15 to 20 centimeters, all along resonant, or is it impaired resonance due to the presence of bowel?
It was resonant while I examined, sir.
All over.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, that's all.
Okay, Santosh Kumar.
Agil, what about the consistency? Is it same throughout?
Sir, most of the site was nodular, sir. So I put it as nodular. Sir.
Consistency.
Sir, hard. It was hard mostly, sir.
Hard throughout, or some areas it is changing?
Sir, only few areas was firm, but mostly it was hard, sir.
What I am asking is, it is a variable consistency or uniformly hard in all the quadrants? It is a very big mass now.
Yes, sir.
30 centimeters mass.
So most of the area was hard, sir. Variable consistency, chances more it was.
So this much large swelling in the pelvis, what all pressure symptoms it can cause?
Sir,
what all structures it can compress?
Yes, sir. IVC compression might cause.
So suppose it compress IVC, what will be the findings in clinical examination? The abdomen you will get.
Sir, in clinical examination, there will be sir, lower limb edema, sir, or dilated veins over abdomen, sir, or any in males, sir, in this patient varicocele can be seen, sir.
If there are dilated veins over the abdomen, how will you confirm that it is due to some venous obstruction, either IVC or?
Sir, flow will be below upwards, sir.
What is a normal flow of the abdominal veins?
Sir,
from the level of umbilicus, how does it flows?
Sir, towards umbilicus, sir.
From umbilicus, below umbilicus and above umbilicus, is there any difference in the flow, normal flow in the veins?
Sir, from above umbilicus, it's below upwards, sir. It's below umbilicus is below downwards, sir.
Okay, so in SVC, what is the alternate channels open up in IVC compression? Blood flows from which veins to which veins?
Sir, sir, to iliac veins, sir.
Okay. Branches of femoral veins through the abdominal wall communicates through the veins above the umbilicus, and the blood will be returned to the superior vena cava. So how will you assess the direction of flow?
Harvey's test.
How will you do it?
Using index finger of both my hands and milking out the blood, sir, and removing one finger at a time, sir.
Okay. What are the other structures which can be compressed other than veins here?
Sir, large other structures like sir, pelvic nerves, sir.
Okay.
Lumbar nerves. Ureter can be compressed, sir.
That is one of the most common thing which is compressed.
Yes.
Whether it produce any symptoms when the ureter is compressed, what it can produce in the abdomen finding clinical examination?
Sir, uretary compression might lead to, sir, hydronephrosis, sir.
How will you examine in clinical examination specific for looking for a possible hydronephrosis in such a case?
Sir, large mass can be palpable, which.
Okay. What about renal angle? Any clinical findings?
No, sir. No, nothing, sir.
Resonance, dullness, percussion of renal angle.
Sir, I didn't do this.
Okay. Suppose there is a hydronephrosis, what happens when you percuss over the renal angle?
Dullness.
Okay. Usually, okay. Okay, that's all.
Oh, Ajil Babu,
Yes, sir.
you should not do unnecessary examination, unnecessary comment. That is one is the mass in the number in right and left above. So you mentioned the mass is not falling for it. So actually, the epigastric mass you can examine the rarely we are near low position. If I told you doing the epigastric mass near low position, that in this case need not mention that. That's sir mentioned that. Professor mentioned your office related to that condition you can mention. Otherwise, the examination will ask other questions which you are not expecting. So, wherever possible, you are close to your diagnosis. Here, no point in examination near purpose and wasting the time. And here also you mentioned the left lateral positions not falling forward. That also wrong statement. You mentioned one slide show left lateral position not falling forward. That's not correct. Something you should correct. Okay, now we will go to examination. Vikram sir, you can proceed. Mention the diagnosis.
Yeah. Now, you already told this is the suspicion. As I said, you have to keep a little broader diagnosis. You have to keep. I will add that here that even if you are suspecting the patient to have undescended testis, the patient could be having a concomitant involvement of the retroperitoneal lymph nodes. We cannot rule that out. Retroperitoneal tumor diagnosis, retroperitoneal sarcoma, one of the diagnosis, and then lymphoma. Okay, lymphoma definitely should be added in this particular patient. And remote possibility, as I said, examination wise, very unlikely that it could be a case of a mass arising from the colon. Which mass arising from the colon can be very large in size? Colon or small bowel, it could be anything.
Mesentery systems.
No, nodular mass, large mass arising, large masses in the abdomen.
So GIST can be such.
GIST can be there. Yes, is it not? GIST also can be there. You cannot rule it out absolutely. GIST. One of the presenting, what is one of the characteristic presenting feature of the GIST which is not there in this patient? Again, it's not seen in all patients, but it's one of the features by which usually GIST will present.
Usually GISTs are asymptomatic, but if at all present with bleeding, sir, like
yes, bleeding, melena. Okay, so that is what is not there. So with this now, how will you proceed with investigations?
Sir, I will start my investigation with routine blood investigation and followed by for this patient, sir, as there is no right test, sir, I will follow with the tumor marker, sir. After that, I'll plan do a USG for both abdomen and also the equine-scrotal region to see for any missed testis, sir, which I missed in the clinical examination. And also will give a rough idea of the abdominal mass.
No, it's always better to go step by step. And if you have some investigations, you should tell. If you don't have, then we will tell you the option. Okay. So what's the first investigation you'd like to do in this patient?
I'll start with my blood investigation, sir.
Whenever we are doing investigations in a patient, okay, we put them into three categories. One is to assess the diagnosis or come to a diagnosis. Number two, if we are suspecting the patient to have malignancy, stage the patient. And number three, the other investigations, which are routine investigations and fitness for surgery investigation in case if the patient requires surgery. Under these three categories, we should channelize investigations. With this background, you tell me now the investigations.
So to assess the lesion, sir, I will start my investigation with a routine USG.
Ultrasound, say ultrasound. Okay. So you'd like to do, you said just now you'll do hematological blood investigations. You said that, then you said now ultrasound. Decided that, no?
Sir, blood, yes, sir, but it's used for staging.
No, I'm not saying that it has to be absolutely compartmentalized. I said you can't use that because you want to do tumor marker in that. I'm not saying like that, but then there is also order simple to complex in each category. That is how usually we go. So which one will you do? With your blood investigation, tumor markers help you in diagnosis? It should, is it not?
Yes, sir.
You're suspecting testicular tumor. Will it not help you in diagnosis?
Sir, tumor marker will help in my diagnosis.
So if you want, you tell me what blood investigation will you do, and then talk about the thing.
Sir, and I will do my blood markers like LDH, AFP, and beta HCG, sir.
Okay, just repeat it again. HCG, beta HCG, then
And,
LDH and
LDH.
alpha fetoprotein. Is it not? So do you have the investigation? That's the first thing you'll do when you do blood investigation?
No, sir. I'll start with my routine, blood routine, sir. Blood RE, ESR, and LFT, RFT, sir.
All right. So do you have the investigation with you or what? Do you have the report or the report is not there?
I didn't put it in the.
Actually, do you know? You have, you can read if you have. That's what I'm asking.
I know the.
You don't have. Okay. So how will you interpret these tumor markers and how it will help you in diagnosis?
Sir, if it is a tumor arising from a testicular tumor, sir, there are tumor markers will be elevated, like LDH might be elevated, sir.
No, I agree that these tumor markers you are doing to find out, assess. What I thought you'd answer is like how it will segregate between the testicular tumors, seminomatous, non-seminomatous.
So seminomatous tumor, usually only few markers are, LDH might be raised. It's not a definite marker for seminoma, but LDH might be raised in tumor for large seminomas. Sir,
Okay.
for a non-seminomatous tumor, sir, like choriocarcinoma, beta HCG will be raised, and for yolk sac tumor, alpha fetoprotein will be raised.
How much will, if it is raised, beta HCG and alpha fetoprotein, you will consider it is significant?
Sir, it will be raised more than 5,000, sir.
Beta HCG and alpha fetoprotein?
Proteins.
AFP, how much? Above what?
AFP also, sir, 5,000.
No, AFP is 1,000, no, 1,000. Okay, 1,000 and 5,000. Then you will consider it to be, there's a possibility of that. Okay. So you have done the tumor markers. We give you both the options. It's raised, it's not raised. Then how do you, let's say first category not raised. Then proceed.
Sir, I'll do a radiological investigation after that.
Such
like,
as?
Sir, ultrasound of the abdomen. I'll start with an ultrasound of abdomen, sir.
Okay, to see what?
Sir, first, sir, to see the mass, sir, what is the mass?
Origin of the mass.
Origin of the mass, sir. Then
so what do you expect in this patient it to be? Let's say undescended testis is there and it's arising from that. Okay, then?
Sir, if it is a tumor from the mass, it will be hypoechoic, sir. Homogeneous site.
What else you'll see?
Sir, then I'll look for any nodes, sir. And also
which nodes? Parotid nodes.
Parotid nodes, sir.
Okay.
Then, sir, being a such large tumor, I'll assess the kidneys because it might compress the ureter and might cause hydronephrosis.
Okay, just now you asked that question. Fine. You have the report or you don't have the report? No.
I know the report, but I didn't put in the.
No. Then you should tell, because then only we can actually proceed properly. No, if you know the reports. No harm in telling. If you are a little blind, then it becomes difficult to assess. Do you know the reports of the tumor markers?
Yes, sir. The LDH was raised, sir, but other tumor markers was not raised.
Not raised. They were not raised. Okay.
Not
the next then, now ultrasound report, can you just mention?
Sir, ultrasound, large homogeneous mass was present, sir.
Could they identify the testis or they were not sure about the testis?
Not sure about the testis.
Okay. All right. So where they will look for the testis?
Sir, then inguinal UST and scrotum UST was done, sir. There was
scrotum and all, you give clinical examination, you can tell testis there or not. Okay. Where else? When you do ultrasound, you particularly look at one place. That's why I asked you that question. Other places clinically also you can feel. When we do an abdominal ultrasound, and if a patient has got undescended testis, where is a particular place you look for? That is where most of the time it will be lying there. No, will it be not lying on near the internal ring, proximal to the ring?
Yes.
You would not like to look particularly. Are you sure it's not mentioned there that in the ultrasound? Do you look for it?
Yes, they look
So knowledge. So they said testis was not visible there.
not visible.
Okay. And no, this thing, ureteric compression was there. That's what you said, no? No evidence was there.
No evidence of it.
Okay. Any other finding was there in ultrasound?
No, sir. No evidence.
So what will be the next investigation?
Sir,
Wait, I think other examiners also should ask because we are going forward with the investigations. Yeah, please.
Oh, Srikumar, any other? Up to the ultrasound.
Yeah. You have done a CT.
yes, sir.
Then CT abdomen, what was the result?
Sir, the CT abdomen, it was a large retroperitoneal mass, which they had a suspicion of a retroperitoneal tumor.
Retroperitoneal?
Tumor, sir. Liposarcoma was there, differential diagnosis.
Then what about the adjacent structures?
Sir, there was no compressive to ureter. Everything was free, sir.
Then did you CT examination, if such a suspicion is there, should we take CT of abdomen alone or?
No, sir. A CT of thorax should also be done, sir, to rule out any lung metastasis.
Was that done in this case?
Yes, sir. There was no lung metastasis.
And just one more point in the examination, the inguinal nodes.
Sir, there was no enlarged node, sir.
Okay. Then how, after this imaging, is there any role for other imaging?
Sir, as the diagnosis was not confirmed, sir, so we did an MRI, sir. Sir, MRI gave a suspicion of a seminoma, sir.
In what way MRI is better than CT in finding this out?
Sir, MRI is better for a testicular tumor, sir. It will give a more better than a CT report, sir.
In what way? That's what I'm asking. Actually, small retroperitoneal lymph nodes better picked up by MRI. That's what is described.
Santosh.
And what about a tissue diagnosis?
The tissue diagnosis didn't attempt, sir, because initially, because if it is a testicular tumor, sir, it will seed, sir, in the abdomen.
It will seed to where?
Sir, if you are doing a transperitoneal, sir, peritoneal metastasis, it will seed, sir.
If it is a scrotal swelling, if you do a aspiration, it is contraindicated. I do agree. But this is somewhat an atypical presentation of an undescended testis turning into a seminoma. It's such a big mass. Don't you want to have a tissue diagnosis before proceeding with further treatment? Is it justifiable?
Yes, sir. Tissue diagnosis is needed, sir, but we didn't attempt yet.
You didn't attempt. I think you should not have the fear of seedling in this particular case, because it is in the abdomen. The other one is actually to avoid spread to the scrotum. Otherwise, that may lead on to a hemioscroterectomy or something like that. That is why we do that. Okay.
Santosh. Santosh, you are.
Is it have uniform attenuation in all areas? CT scan?
No, sir. It was variable, sir.
Does have tumor necrosis areas?
Yes, sir. Necrosis areas, sir.
So that is more in favor of retroperitoneal tumors. Is it not?
Yes, sir.
So in that case, you can think about a true cut biopsy, CT guided. How will you proceed with management without biopsy or tissue diagnosis in this case? If you do not have tissue diagnosis, how will you proceed with management?
Sir, MRI, if it is suggestive of a testicular tumor, sir, causing this, we shall proceed with an planning for surgery, sir.
What surgery?
Sir, we will Sir, explore and remove the tumor, sir.
How will you explore?
Sir, transabdominally only.
It needs a laparotomy. So there is no point in not doing a true cut biopsy through the abdominal wall in this case. There is no question of seedling comes there.
Yes.
But if in a small tumor is a problem of seedling comes. Is it not?
It's all guided approach. Basically.
Guided.
Okay, that is all.
Yes. Yes, other examiners. Hello. Do you want to any other investigation before this laparotomy? Will you assess any other investigations?
Sir, CT MRI and CT of a chest is needed, sir.
Chest, abdomen, and pelvis.
Yes.
You can mention like that. Okay. Yes.
If the CT shows that the mass is closely, because you expect it in this particular patient, it's a mass in the hypogastric region, it is closely associated abutting the ureters. First of all, what CT will show that? What will you ask the radiologist to do that sort of CT? And if it shows that, then how it will change the management?
Sir, sorry, I will give in vitro ureterogram, sir.
No. In vitro means what? What do you mean by in vitro?
Sir, giving an.
See, again, I'll repeat my question. Okay. That the CT, what type of CT will show the relationship of the ureters with the mass? That is number one. What will you tell the radiologist for that? Okay, I'll tell the answer. You'll tell the radiologist to take delayed films. Okay, for that. Now, if you find, which is very likely in this patient, even if there's no hydronephrosis, I'm not saying it's compressing the ureters, but it is closely associated with the ureters. It's almost abutting, that means it's touching the ureters. So if you find something like that on CT, what will you do next?
Sir, I'll take a urology consultation and do a DJ stenting, sir.
Yes, so that is what is very important. What is the use of doing that?
Sir, it will help in identifying doing my surgical procedures. And
ureters during the surgical procedure. So it can be done on table, or it's always better to do it before, so that you have put 2 stents on both sides, or if it is one ureter abutting, then on that particular side. So that's very important. Whether it's a retroperitoneal tumor or it's a large mass like this arising from the testicular mass and you're planning resection, what else you'll particularly see in CT in this particular patient or MRI, okay, based on your clinical findings. And we'll be very interested to see that when I'm discussing with the radiologist. What is the point I'm mentioning there?
Variety notes. Notes.
No, you never mention any nodes in the clinical findings. So where is the question on that? I'm saying what you found on clinical findings. If I'm sitting with your adults, I'll particularly look for that. Because that is very important for management. For surgery, I'm telling.
Sir, is the testis visualized?
Not testis, you see. I'm saying either it is testicular tumor, retroperitoneal, you take anything as a diagnosis. Okay, you said MRI might be suggested. See, you said on examination, this is an immobile mass. When you say that there is no intrinsic mobility, what you're trying to connote for an intra-abdominal mass, for a intra-abdominal mass.
Sir, it is a fixed
mass which is lying in the abdomen. When will it become immobile?
Fixity to the retroperitoneal.
Posterior parietis, is it not? So would you not like to see where it is fixed, which is making it immobile, and whether it is resectable or not resectable? So you're talking of true-cut biopsy and then surgery. If it is not resectable, then where is the question of surgery? So tell me what findings on CT will make it unresectable?
If it is,
that is what you have to look for.
If it is compressing large vessels and encasing it.
Such as which vessels you're talking of?
Sir, iliac vessels, sir.
No, look at the mass here. Okay, it is going above the umbilicus. That's what you said. Now tell me which vessels you're talking of.
Major vessels above the umbilicus.
It starts from there, the mass.
Sir, abdominal aorta and
Yeah, aorta and the IVC, both
IVC.
sides, and then the other vessels. So you'd like to look for if it is encasing, will it be operable?
no, sir.
Whatever is the primary diagnosis, irrespective of that. You never mentioned that point, especially when it is a mass which is immobile on physical examination. What other structures?
The blood vessels like
No, no, blood vessels is over. Now the largest vessels you already commented. I'm asking what other structures, if it is fixed to it, it will make it undissectable.
ureter, bilateral ureter is involved.
Why bilateral ureter involvement? Then you have to take consent pre-op. No, what are the structures lying in the posterior apparatus? Can you tell where it gets fixed? You'll not be able to dissect.
Sir, posterior. Sir, I didn't get the good.
Right.
Posterior apparatus, na? Anterior abdominal wall, you have similarly posterior apparatus behind in the retroperitoneal area. I'm asking. One is the large vessels. What are other things there? Any bones are lying there?
Sir, vertebra.
You must have seen that when you do laparotomy.
Yes, sir,
Not
vertebra.
palpated. The aorta lies on which side? And where does the IVC lie?
Sir, IVC is towards right, sir. Aorta is
Of what? Of what?
sir, vertebra. Sir.
Then if it gets fixed to the vertebra, can you remove the vertebra?
No, sir.
All these points you have to tell. So do you know the CT finding of this patient?
Sir, there was no attachment, sir.
Then how it has become immobile? So either there is attachment or there is no attachment. If there is no attachment, it is not no longer immobile. Restricted mobility will be there. So one of the things is not correct. Well, you're very particular in telling that it is totally immobile, is it not? That's what you said. When you have a hard fixed growth anywhere in the body, it is inoperable for all practical purposes. Anywhere in the body, top to head to toe, it becomes like that. Inoperable in a sense, like if you have the peripheral limbs, obviously fixed to the bone, and you'll have to do something like a amputation or a bony excision. So that is why I'm telling you, you should have pointed that out in this particular patient. If the testis was in the area of in the let's say on the right side, okay, just lying proximal to the internal ring, it was 4-5 centimeter in size, okay, or maybe 6-7 centimeter in size, and this mass is still present. What will you think of this mass as slightly higher placed? You think in terms of retroperitoneal lymph node involvement.
Yes.
How will you manage that?
Sir, I'll remove the testis first because, and after with the histopathological report, sir, I will continue my treatment, sir. If it is seminoma, I'll go for an radiation.
Radiation of what? The lymph nodes.
Lymph nodes, sir.
What about chemotherapy?
Sir, first, sir, if it depends on the grade, sir. It's low grade seminoma, sir, radiation itself will reduce the tumor load, sir.
What is the characteristic feature of seminoma as far as malignancies are concerned?
Sir, it is very radius sensitive, sir.
Okay, let me give you a hint. As far as the prognosis is concerned, tell me what is the characteristic feature of seminoma testis and which is another tumor in the body where we correlate that with this. First, you tell me the first question, answer.
Sir, it is highly radius sensitive, sir.
There are many tumors which are radiosensitive. No? What is so special about seminoma testis which is not there for any tumor in the body? That's what I'm asking. I give you a hint also, prognosis.
So prognosis is good, sir. Even if high grade, sir. And
What is the 5-year survival rate for a
so stage 1
lower stage seminoma testis?
more than 80%.
Are you sure? Have you read in the books or you're guessing? The homework for you. Seminoma testis has the best prognosis in the lower stage, which is the other malignancy which has got the same. God says you have to have a malignancy. A man should select seminoma testis. What a lady should select. It has got a similar type of prognosis. Tumor which happens in ladies more often than the men has got excellent prognosis. See, any tumor which is disseminated will not have.
So
They
thyroid
almost get cured. Yes,
Thyroid.
papillary carcinoma of thyroid, is it not? These are the two tumors who have got excellent prognosis. I don't have any further questions.
Anjilva, will you consider the retrobal lymph node dissection? Or what stage of disease in seminoma?
Sir, seminoma usually is stage 1, sir. Only radiotherapy is needed, sir. Stage 2, sir, chemo can be attempted.
Retrobal lymph node dissection?
Sir, is more
Testicular tumor with the lymph nodes in the parietic nodes. Will you remove the surgery or?
Sir, it's mainly for non-seminomatous tumors, sir. We do a RPL in this.
Non-surgery. You can non-surgery can be a lymph node, retrobal lymph node dissection also advised. And it's the controversy that we are not discussing here. Retrobal lymph node dissection. Otherwise, this treatment any immunological therapy for the testicular tumors?
Sir, I don't know, sir.
Okay. But no immunology therapy this time, it's only bladder tumor. And if these parents misdiagnosed, that is undescended, early not detected by the parents actually. So ideally, at what age should be corrected?
Sir, after
Yeah,
1 year, sir.
Before?
1 year, sir. Before 1 year, sir. After 1 year, sir.
For 2 years, you should correct it ideally. Otherwise, it's a chance of like developing malignancy in the undescended testis. Okay. I think
This particular case, actually, have you, if you have done a core biopsy and you get a report of seminoma, in view of the fixity, will you proceed with surgery or radiation?
Sir, such large tumor, if the CT and MRI is showing inoperability, sir, I'll go for an radiation therapy. Sir.
In that particular situation, will you do something in addition before starting the treatment? Young male, 30 years.
Sir, he's only having one child at present, sir. I'll do a sperm banking before.
Really, that should be done before starting on with radiation. Okay.
what do you mean high orchidectomy?
Sir, high orchidectomy is removing the testis and the cord structure from the inguinal incision, sir.
In case of suspected any older technique, they are suspecting tuberculosis and malignancy. Any technique? What is the name of the technique?
Chevasu.
How will you do that?
Sir, after taking the testis through the inguinal route, sir, I'll cut open it along the long axis and do a frozen section, sir. First, clinically look for signs of malignancy, and after frozen section, if it is negative.
What is the physical examination to say the tuberculosis? How will you rule out tuberculosis of testis or epidermis? How will you that? What examination?
Sir,
physical.
Seminal tubules will be normal, sir, in tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis? No, in the correct examination, you can palpate the seminal vesicles in case of tuberculosis and a classically beaded appearance. It should be honest. Beaded up in the tuberculosis of the testis. That is a characteristic feature of tuberculosis. That's a clinical feature. Yes. Anything else, Santosh?
I would like to ask one question. What is the reason for doing a hyoarchectomy in suspected testicular tumor? Why we don't carry out a low archectomy or through scrotal approach?
The scrotal approach will cause a seeding to the scrotum, sir, which lead to inguinal nodes also getting involved, sir. So we have to give radiation to that area also.
So you're opening an alternative channel of spread. Okay. Conventionally, the testis will not drain to the inguinal or external iliac group of lymph nodes, and to avoid opening of this channel, we carry out hyoarchectomy, or what was just now mentioned. In a suspected case, rarely you can use. Nowadays, the cross-section imaging is very good. So that is why Schuster's manual is not commonly used, but earlier it was used, what you described, the manual. But that's the principle, that to avoid opening an alternative pathway, you should not take a scrotal route. Okay.
What is arcade tumor? What do you about an arcade tumor?
Sir, rapidly aggressive tumors, tumors.
Rapidly aggressive tumor. Within weeks, patient can expect. Yes. Santosh, anything? Anybody want to?
Akhil, what is the classical clinical manifestation of a testicular tumor in scrotum? How will you test for testicular sensation?
Sir, testicular sensation will be absent, but it should not be tested, sir.
How will you test it? How will you test? What is a classical description? And what is a finding?
Sir, painless heart swelling of the scrotum.
How will you test for that pain? How will you elicit that painlessness?
Sir, we should not do a.
If you do, how will you do? What is the methodology? I'm asking. What is the sickening sensation? What is the description in a normal testis when you try to elicit testicular sensation? It's in DAS. Everybody reads DAS, clinical DAS. When you try to squeeze the testis, what happens? That's what is the normal thing happening when you try to squeeze, and where does it happen?
There will be pain and retraction.
Pain and
retraction of the testis.
Where pain? Where? What area? Over the testis or somewhere else?
The lower abdomen.
Okay. That is what I was asking.
Yes, finally, I want to know what are the differential diagnosis of a testicular tumor? Differential diagnosis of testicular tumor.
Sir, chronic epidermolysis, sir, or a hematocele, sir.
Anything else? Testicular tumor, malignant.
Sir, lymphoma, sir.
Lymphoma, then? Leukemia infiltration of the testis. And finally, for sake of complete secondaries like melanoma also can present like this. I think now the time for our evaluators will go to first answer, comment on the case presentation. Additional points.
Yeah. Good evening, Dr. Gopi, Dr. Vikram Kate. Excellent the history taking, and I really enjoyed your examination methodology. It goes back to our times of questioning the candidate, and we ourselves being a candidate, how we were also questioned.
Thank you very much.
Now, regarding the student is concerned, never have a stereoscopic vision. You fell for the absence of testis and straight away went for the diagnosis. You must have lateral thinking. Lateral thinking is very, very important. Your lacunae, as Dr. Vikram Kate has identified, is in lateral thinking, in a defective physical examination, and unwanted statements like the top space resonance, the vomiting which you could not explain properly. These things are will go as minus points in your clinical presentation. So always think laterally with all possible anatomical diagnosis on the first instance. And based on the anatomical diagnosis, I believe that you should ask questions pertaining to the viscera that it is involved in that particular area. The recurrent pain you were talking about, you could not really explain why there is pain in that swelling. Recurrent pain, it could be due to hemorrhage. Suppose it is an undescended testis. What is the commonest cause for recurrent pain? Torsion may be a reason, but this is a big tumor. I'm not questioning that part. Now, examination of the scrotum, one point I always would like to make is that whether you are able to palpate any structure of this spermatic cord. If it is there, the testis would have been atrophic. One differential diagnosis of an absent testis in the scrotum could be an atrophic testis following sometimes a torsion in childhood. We don't know. So that part of examination is very important rather than examining only the rugosity, etc. The other aspects of anatomical aspects of ectopic testis or undescended or mal-descended testis has been wonderfully explained and discussed. Regarding the fixity, it's very important. It's in CT scan, the investigations that the professor has been asking. Well, we go for evaluative investigations and diagnostic investigations. Once you have the diagnostic investigations as a tumor, you go for a staging evaluation, right? That should be the thing. And rectal examination, I thought that you probably could be able to palpate this mass as a part of a bidigital examination or a bimanual examination, I thought, because it is going down into the pelvis. Yes, regarding the biopsy, yes, if you are having an irresectable tumor, you must have a pathological diagnosis, no matter by what means, whether it is a laparoscopic biopsy or whether it is a CT-guided through-cut biopsy. We must have a biopsy confirmation to proceed with what type of treatment this patient can take, whether it is radiotherapy or gene-directed therapy of the tumor. Things are developing fast in that particular way that you can probably dictate the type of chemotherapy for a particular tumor. Excellent case, very good case for discussion. And I should congratulate Dr. Vikram Sathe for an elaborate...
All the examiners, please don't say only mine and everybody else.
Yes, everybody has done their job, but then you have done, made the candidate understand the importance of clinical history. Elaborating the clinical history in detail is very, very important. One should not get into a spot diagnosis and impulsive diagnosis and stick on to that. That's my simple, humble suggestion in this case. Thanks a lot.
Yes, Dhanendra sir. Sir, Babu sir. Sir, Moti.
Yeah, excellent discussion. Especially I have to congratulate Professor Vikram Kate because the candidate was exposed because he came with a myopic view of discussing the testicular tumor. So, and what all things he missed, I feel that it should be a lesson for him how to evaluate the history and physical examination properly. So that was done very well by Professor Vikram Kate, of course, other examiners too. As usual, I would like to mention 10 or maybe 6 or 10 points. Most important for such a case, I feel that the bladder must be emptied before doing any examination. Any hypogastric mass, the urinary bladder must be emptied, either by catheterization before palpation. Otherwise, you may miss, sometimes it may be bladder. My professor used to tell that hypogastrium, the most important masses are the bladder, the uterus, and then maybe ovary, all those things, especially in female. So patient is male, but you have to remember that such mass in female, you have to think of uterus, urinary bladder, ovary, etc. And then retroperitoneum is a big area. So the examples are maybe retroperitoneal teratoma or sarcoma or lymphoma or retroperitoneal cyst, etc. So I used to tell my PGs, in addition to the 9 areas, this is the 10th area, the retroperitoneum. So retroperitoneum, you should think of the possible pathologies like sarcoma, lymphoma, keratoma, etc. Then, of course, in the hypogastrium or the lower abdomen, you have got the parietal masses. Sometimes you get parietal masses like the desmoid or maybe a rectus sheath hematoma, or sometimes urachal cyst, in addition to the common conditions of the incisional hernia, those things. So that is parietal mass. Then, of course, you should know the clinical features of uterine masses in female and also the clinical features of ovary. Then you should also know the classification of ovarian malignancy. Even though we are general surgeons, sometimes you get cases, especially female patient with a hypogastric mass, you should know the classification of the ovarian neoplasms. So that's all. I don't want to talk anything about the testicular tumor because already the candidate came with a diagnosis and it was exposed. So testicular tumor is a different topic, of course, which was discussed enough, I feel, for such a case. So once again, I thank all the panel of examiners, including our coordinator, Professor E.V. Gobi, and our external examiner, Professor Vikram Kate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I add one point, Dr. Vikram?
Yeah, please.
The retroperitoneum or the parietis, you are asking about the posterior parietis. The sacrum, sacrum is something which the candidate should have talked about. And in fact, such large one, I was actually considering whether the possibility has to be considered of a sacral chordoma. Of course, it presents mostly posteriorly, but we had situations, anterior presentation. The other situations that we had been anterior spinal meningocele, huge meningocele presenting in that situation. Just an eye opener.
Yeah, definitely possible. Definitely possible.
Had a scimitar sacrum.
I think I have to add one more point. Pelvic tumors. Whenever you mention a
fixed
to the posterior, but maybe pelvis also. The moment he said hard swelling, I thought it is coming from the bone. So,
me too.
Yeah.
I also thought so.
So you should think of pelvis also or posteriorly. So now the investigation revealed that it is not at all fixed
to the bone.
So thank you.
Wonderful.
Yes. Thank you very much. And Ajal Babu, overall you have done well. Okay, with so many people asking questions, it's not easy to answer everything.
Right.
Overall, you're quite confident in presentation. That's very good.
Right.
That is what is very important.
Thank you, Vikram Kate, sir. And
thank you very much, Dr. Gopi. It was a pleasure to be a part of this panel here. So I'd like to thank all the coordinators and other examiners also. It's always learning points from everybody. It's like that.
It's a great pleasure for us, sir. Your presence and your way of asking questions, like sir mentioned. Enjoyed your approach. And
thank you very much. Actually, I asked all simple things only. I think other examiners asked specific points. So
I also congratulate Dr. Santosh, Dr. Sri Kumar, and all other my colleagues and my students, all the colleges, and also today's presenter, Ajal Babu, for your presentations. I think, and next week one more college waiting for that is Jubilee, and I think all other colleges are over, and nobody on the 11th section next, that is the Jubilee. The topic will be, next case will be at hernia at the same time. same day next week. Once more, thank you very much. Good night to everyone.
Dr.
Thank
Akhil,
you. Good night.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Akhil
Yes, sir.
Babu did very well.
Thanks.
Adil Babu.
It's a difficult case. It is a very difficult case. You have done very well.
Very
Right?
interesting. Also.
Very interesting and difficult case, no doubt about it. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, sir. Good night.
So good night.
Good night. Good
Good
night.
night. Good night.